In every age, a few come into the realization of nature's tremendous powers, and in one way or another, legitimate or otherwise, have become temporary wielders of the serpent scepter. As a man can steal money and remain wealthy until the law disposes him, so may a black magician steal a certain amount of divine power and manipulate it to the gratification of his own ends, until at last his misuse of power destroys him. During the latter Atlantean world, and again in our own modern civilization, there have been and are minds powerful but not virtuous. These two words are not always synonymous. Some of these perverted beings were actual demigods, as glorious as Satan himself, but their misdeeds and their falsities sent them hurling into oblivion, like planets gone wrong. These demon gods bred black magic, the perversion of power, in the minds of men, and to this time it has remained nurtured by man's besetting sin, selfishness. Evil will never cease to exist until the selfishness and greed are overcome as factors in dictating the attitudes of men. It is the common thing for the concrete mind to sacrifice the eternal to the temporal. Man, concentrated upon the limited area of the known, loses sight of the effect of his actions upon the limitless area of the unknown. Short-sightedness, consequently, is the cause of endless misery. Moral short-sightedness results in vice, philosophical short-sightedness in materialism, and religious short-sightedness in bigotry, rational short-sightedness in fanaticism. Wise is the man who serves the greatest end. Whatever be the cost, the thing which men have called harmony and which nature knows as perfect adjustment is worth all that must be paid for it. Adjustment is the establishment of harmonious relationships between the universal planes of nature and the centers of body consciousness in man. Selfishness promotes self-interest and self-gratification. Slowly the world about vanishes. The soul lives more and more to the attainment of its own desires, and before long the rule of mammon is complete in that life. This means that the best dies, and only the shell of the material personality remains. It means that the urge of aspiration is no longer felt, and that the spirit, immortal and superior, lives as the drudge of appetites and the bond-servant of an animal organism, doomed to the martyrdom within the prison walls of perversion. We live in an age enlightened in those things pertaining to the body, but woefully ignorant concerning those things which are divine. Every day the spirit of commercialism is fed with lifeblood to millions. Every day the struggle of competition takes more of man's time and energy, until the finer nature dies for want of consideration, and virtue is deemed as an impediment to progress of the material juggernaut. This turbidity of mental and moral outlook is the breeding place for the larva of black magic, the curse of the human race. Black magic is a disease. It is a racial cancer. Its long tendrils are like those of an octopus. It infests the church and state alike. It enters the hovel of the poor as false hope, leading him to crime and self-destruction. It enters the salons of the wealthy, and as ambition turns the heart of man into a scheming organ for the accumulation of opulence. Black magic is bred in selfishness. It's nursed by greed and tolerated only by hypocrisy. But nevertheless, is a most common effervescence of a commercial age. Magic is not a medieval superstition, tutored by the spirit of ignorance. It is a very material fact. This so-called Age of Enlightenment is in reality only a transference of emphasis from one mental function to another, and while the spirit of arrogance and selfishness remains in the souls of men, they will sell their immortal spirits, as did Faust, for the gratification of self, or more correctly, the not-self. Honesty is a jewel of priceless value, and the forces of evil have little power over a life lived true in principle. Man, by his covetousness, must first offer his soul for sale before the devil is in a position to buy it. Nature is an endless area of crisscrossing energies. Those who have power can demand that these energies obey them, whether for good or for ill, and senseless force must obey. But force also has its laws and its penalties, and man must obey the laws of force or suffer the consequence of his folly. The black magician, in his selfish egotism, thinks himself greater than God or law, and continually breaks the rules of force, but sooner or later, like Faust again, he is destroyed by his own servant. In our modern world, black magic finds a fertile breeding ground in man's desires. Age after age, the wants of man destroy him. In ignorance he plays with fire. In thoughtlessness he ignores the immutable laws of nature, and then wonders why the tempests break about his head. Wonders why lava and ash bury his cities, why wars lay waste his lands, and why mighty upheavals of the earth cause continents and nations to vanish in a single day. He neither obeys the laws of force nor recognizes that cause and effect rule all things, and that day after day he reaps misery as the harvest of thoughtlessness. The white magician consecrates his life to study, meditation, and service, that he may know the law and may direct force to its appointed ends. He molds himself into the plan, becoming part of the divine rhythm by sacrificing himself and his wishes to the will of the infinite, asking only to know wherein his duty lies, and how he may be the greatest service to the greatest number. And on the other hand, the black magician is firmly of the belief that he knows what he needs, when in reality he only knows what he wants. He seeks to mold the plan into his own desires. He believes that the universe wants him to be greater than his fellow men, when the cosmic all actually does not know that he exists, other than just being a tiny atom passing through the myriads of similar things to an appointed end. Now let us see how the magician, with his knowledge of the invisible side of nature, is able to manipulate the unseen forces of nature. First, the student must be impressed with the fact that the wise man is seeking to know what nature desires him to do, while the foolish man knows already and tries to force nature to act as a servant of his whims. Nowhere is black magic more apparent than in modern phases of religion. In both the new and the old doctrines, instead of emphasizing the will of the Logos as the law of men, students have been taught to demand of the infinite and that he will obey. No man may justly demand anything except the fruitage of his own labors. Today, however, millions are seeking, by the root of psychology and metaphysics, to reap where they have not sown, believing that the possession of the knowledge which makes them greater than their brethren entitles them to enslave the weaker and the uninformed. Let us now consider the four bodies of man as elements in magic, and differentiate clearly between the right and the wrong function of these bodies. First, we will study the bodies as a group. We may say that they are created to be the helpmeet of their Lord and Master, Spirit, for in truth they symbolize Eve taken from the side of Adam. The attributes of these bodies are legion, or many, for each has a character of its own. We may say of the bodies of man, as of children, train them when they are young in the way that they should go, and when they are gray, they will not depart therefrom. Our natures cannot be allowed to just grow, like Topsy and any other children can be allowed to run around promiscuously and then be expected to amount to anything. Our natures must be trained, and there must be a definite understanding of who is the master and who is the servant. A near philosopher allows his mind to ramble, and thus creating a host of abominable and absurd concoctions of witless thought. He involves himself and those about him in arguments, dissension, and never-ending streams of self-contradiction. He tries to solve the economic situation, creates new religions without learning the old, and buys his thoughts at pawn shops. His general purpose in life being to tear down something. He is like some of the writers of the medieval literatures, who strove to give the impression that other authors were liars. His mind, which should clarify the issues of life, does nothing but complicate them, and is used only as a means of finding gratification for the senses and thrills for the nervous system. His emotional organism is a mass of appetites and whims. He mistakes ambition for aspiration, cowardness for prudence, and greed for economy, and lust for love. So we may repeat that through all this chain of bodies, we see that the consciousness, instead of being clarified by its bodies, becomes more hopelessly involved by them every day. We may say, by way of definition, that white magic is the service of the real, the consecration of life to the protection and unfoldment of the real. It is the use of the forces of nature for the good of all. Black magic is the use of wisdom and its accompanying power to gratify sensation, ambition, desires, greed, and that medley of function which we call the personality. Its inevitable result is the destruction of the entire spiritual and physical structure. The white magician seeks to gain control over himself, but the black magician seeks to obtain control over others. Man has 4 centers of consciousness, 4 tangible assets, which he may consecrate to the attainment of reality: his mind, his heart, his vitality, and his physical body. A man may be forced to serve another if that one can temporarily or permanently secure dominion over any of these 4 centers. To secure dominion over the physical body of another is to make the person a slave. To secure control over the vital body is to steal the vitality of another person, as in vampirization, where one person lives off the life essences of another. A common example of this can be seen when young people are brought up in the association of elderly people. The radiant energy of the child is sapped by the older person, and as a result, such children are usually very nervous and seldom strong. Another example of control of the vital system is to be found in mediumship. When decarnate spirits take ectoplasm from the spleen of a medium in order to materialize, this usually results in the nervous and the physical exhaustion of the medium, for he has given his own life as a vehicle to the outside intelligence. The astral body is usually attacked through an excess of feeling, such as religious frenzy, grief, fear, or hate. When a person realizes that he can influence others while they are incapable of reasoning because of an emotional excess, he awakens these emotional excesses for the purpose of influencing the weaker ones, as in the case of evangelistic revivals. Such an instigating mind is a black magician. The sending of love, hate, or similar feelings to another in the hope of awakening a similar condition in them for selfish or personal reasons is also black magic. Mental black magic is far more complicated, for it includes practically all prosperity, metaphysics, autosuggestion, mental suggestion, occult treatments, demonstration over environment and conditions, the misuse of hypnosis, mesmerism, personality culture, and other varieties too numerous to mention. In one way or another, it includes practically all religious and economic graft. In fact, every method in which the power of one person over another is used for the aggrandizement of the stronger. It covers every method of gaining superiority, except those based on an honest use of the merit system. Those who can do a certain thing better than others do not need black magic in order to excel at all. We find, under perversions of this idea, such business subjects as psychological salesmanship and the like. The systems advocated work admirably, but they bring endless sorrow to whoever attempts to use them. People who use these false systems vindicate themselves, for the most part, on two unsound hypotheses. One, that God has intended man to have whatever his puny intellect desires, and two, that man knows what he needs. Both of these are false assumptions. Man was not intended by God to be rich, wise, beautiful, healthy, witty, of charming personality, or happily married. This does not mean that the Lord has any objection to any of these things, or all of them. It merely means that if man desires these things, he must go forth, as Adam was directed to, earning his bread by the sweat of his brow, and not by the sweat of someone else's. The aura of man's consciousness is his dwelling place. It is his feudal castle. Though he be driven from his home, from his world, this is his sanctuary. None has a right, for good or for ill, to enter that sanctuary other than by the door, any more than one would have the right to enter another's home by the kitchen window. The door of the sanctuary in this case is the physical world, because here all men have the privilege of knowing their opponent. And here all have the opportunity to struggle against the thing that they do not desire. Here your brother has the privilege of rejecting your proposition, or of accepting it if such be his pleasure. He may let you into his house, or he may keep you out as he may see fit, for here at least there is one equality. Men may say, quote, yes or no, according to moral dictates, and may have the privilege of defending their integrity with their lives. You may go up to your friend John and say, quote, I wish you would stop smoking. You ought not to do it. But you have no right, regardless of how virtuous or altruistic your desire may be, to sneak into the brain of John and implant something there which he cannot combat because he does not know that it exists. Any person who does such a thing assumes the responsibility for the life that he has led out of its natural course. The masters themselves, our elder brothers, will enter no man's house unless invited, for they accord all creatures the privilege of living their own lives. If an occultist were to break both legs and should ask in whatever way he knows that one of the great healers should mend his leg, the healer would come, labor with that leg, and go away even though he knew the right were broken also. He would not touch it, for he has been given permission to work only upon the one. Wisdom is given to no man until he asks for it, for in nature every creature is accorded the privilege of unfolding its own destiny, guarded and protected legitimately by those intelligences placed there by nature for that purpose. Those about us in the world who seek to assume the lives of others and set aside the law of individual completeness always injure and seldom do good. An aged and wise Chinese once set out to visit a distant place. He sent a messenger ahead to tell the good folks of the house to prepare him no food save rice. But when he arrived, he found many courses of dinner awaiting him, for the good family felt that they must so honor his presence. The philosopher reproved them, saying, quote, "I asked for rice, and you have given me fish. I asked for rice, and you have given me corn. I asked for rice, and you have given me meat. I asked for rice, and you have given me sweets. And among all these things, you have given me no rice." End quote. Observing that the family was hurt by the words, the philosopher added, quote, "I have lived many years, and after studying carefully this body which God has given me, I have found that it doth flourish nobly upon rice. It was with wisdom that I ordered rice. It was with folly that you insulted me by offering me the other foods. You say that I am a great philosopher, that I am wiser than all other men, and yet you did not think me wise enough to order my own meal." End quote. And in the same way, when our brother asks for rice, we have no right to give him meat, because we think that's what he ought to have. It matters not whether the meat be physical or spiritual, whether the rice be literal or allegorical. No man who is sick should be healed merely just because he is ailing. He should learn the lesson that accompanies the disease that he has brought upon himself. To affirm health is foolishness. To find out the reason for the ailment, make right the wrong, and become healthy again is wise and proper. To be so moderate, so wise, so thoughtful as to not come sick is still better philosophy. It is black magic of the worst kind to interfere in any way with the individuality and mental independence of any human being. If this individual becomes a menace to society, it may become necessary to incarcerate him for the good of the community, but this does not in any way interfere with the conscious functioning of his mind. If the incident shows such a one the error of his ways, it is well, but whatever the result, he has been permitted to remain the maker of his own destiny and the captain of his own soul. He is at least living his own life and dying in the way that he chooses. He has been reasoned with, and it has failed. He has scorned pleadings and prayers. All has been done that man can do. Let no one enter the sanctuary, even of the criminal soul, for as his spirit is a part of God endowed with the inalienable prerogative of choice, so the vengeance of God will descend upon him who seeks to steal in and cloud the brain or influence the divine spark against its own will. Many individuals have played havoc with the laws of nature by not allowing the individual to fulfill his own destiny. We cannot always tell why souls come into the world rich or poor, some to grow strong and survive, and others to become weak and succumb. But this we do know, that the law of karma dictates these things, placing each life where it will best learn the lesson needed for its growth. Some must learn in sickness and in pain, and others in laughter and joy. Some must learn to be exalted, and others to be humbled themselves. But all are here to save their souls by the sweat of their own brows, to knead the bread of their own existence, even though they must mix it with their own life-blood. What man of myopic vision dares to ordain health for the sick or illness for the strong? Who dares to say this poor man should be rich or this man should be poor? Does he know the reason for his coming? Does he know the virtues and the vices which lie hidden in the past, are in the invisible causes of his present condition? Does he know the reason for the environment wherein he dwells, or the urges that have led him to the present state? If not, then he should be silent. By this we do not mean that the world should be unsympathetic or unready to help. We do mean, however, that the help should be given and not forced upon the other. It means that we should serve each other, help each other, and love each other, but we should never try to obtain the whip hand over another or over nature. What right has anyone to believe that a man was born into the world to be happy? In the Arabian Nights it is written, quote, "Happiness must be earned," end quote. We are born with a divine birthright, a mind, a heart, 2 hands, and 2 feet. If any of these be missing at the time of our appearance, we have some other function proportionately developed to take its place. And with these tools we may go forth and earn happiness, but we have no right to assume that someone is going to thrust it upon us. We have come here for experience, as a child goes to school. We may be happy in our studies, or we may curse them all the days of our lives. The wise are happy in doing the thing that should be done. When we command the universe to make well the sick, or to make the rich poor, we know not whereof we speak. For in our zeal and our ignorance, we may be doing irreparable injury to the one we love, like a parent who cannot deny his children the sweetmeats that they want. In granting their desires, we endanger both their lives and their future efficiency. Let us rather assist all to adjust themselves to the things as they are, helping to build a more noble destiny for themselves, not trying to give them something or force the unknown upon them, but rather assisting all to develop those faculties which will make them worthy to have the things which they desire, and that great peace which all the world is seeking. When we ask the Infinite Father to give us those blessings which we lack, or to strengthen the crooked paths wherein we walk, let us always add this stipulation to our endless string of desires. Quote, "Let these things be, if they are best for me. If not, thy will, not mine, be done." Let us always qualify our will to achieve by such deference to the divine will that alone does all things well. In this we make safe the course of our procedure. This humility will save us from great adversity, who, under the guise of egotism, whispers to us that we are greater than the infinite. Time and time again, as Milton has said, we are hurled flaming from the ethereal skies when we seek to be greater than that power which is the cause of all things. We all want the good things of life, and we all desire to be surrounded by friends, but we have no right to expect to attract any of these things except when our own lives have earned us the right to be honored, respected, and admired. The struggle of modern competitive ethics is very keen, but it offers to the winner a prize in keeping with the intensity of the strife. The environment of modern social conditions was created by human qualities and temperaments, and man has placed himself therein in order to learn how to adjust himself to its complications and to its uncertainties. The victory lies in the control that he gains over himself, his viewpoint, his temperament, and his idiosyncrasies. Man has long considered happiness to lie in dominating others, or and keeping up with the standards of the Joneses. All through the ages, he has striven either to imitate or to control others, instead of acquiring self-control and unfolding the individuality which makes him different from all other things and gives him the power of excelling in something. When man exchanges his daily life of service for mental shortcuts and excuses his voices instead of mastering them, he is falling under the influence of black magic, a subtle power which caters to the worst in him. People are eternally trying to walk out of difficulties instead of trying to work out of them. The result is always fatal, for the problem evaded must be forever the problem unmastered. In the picture on page 6, we see the auric bodies of man. In the center is the physical, the stone. Above and around this radiate the lines of force, which we call the finer bodies. These bodies are urges to mastery and also endless causes of slavery, depending on whose shoulders the responsibility rests. Surrounding this black physical form is man's disease armor, called the vital aura, shown diagrammatically in the drawing as a checkered area because of the impenetrations and crisscrossing of the two higher ethers with the two of the lower. Under normal conditions, this etheric body radiates through the pores of the skin in a form resembling fine fur, extending several inches beyond the body. Occultism teaches that germs are more astral and metaphysical than substantial, and as a result, while this vital aura radiates from the body, it protects man against evil forces and influences from both physical and etheric worlds. If he is run down, debilitated, or his vital force depleted, this aura loses its power and allows 1,000 external influences to tear down his strength and his courage. It also permits disease elements to enter, and the result is often fatal. Outside the aura is the egg-shaped astral body, with its center in the liver and its large end downward, surrounding the areas of the greatest sensation. It is ever-changing in color, and through it passes endless shadow forms which express in panorama the emotion and feelings of man. It is glorious, radiant, opaline, never appearing twice the same. Outside this is the mental body, as it would appear in a highly developed adept as an egg-shaped vehicle with its large end upward, bulging through the area of greatest intelligence. It is the midnight blue of the dark nebula earlier referred to. These bodies are visible clairvoyantly, also physically with the aid of the Kilner screens, as interpreting globes of light, and constitute the causal bodies lying between or behind the motion, emotion, and rationally expressed by the dense physical envelope. At a point between the eyes in the forehead dwells the human consciousness, in the holy place of his tabernacle, enthroned among the globes which form his bodies. Man, by his actions, is gradually unfolding the possibilities lying latent in his physical body. By his conservation of energy, he is gradually unfolding sequentially the centers of his vital consciousness. This end can be attained only through intelligent living, for the vitality is extracted from the atmosphere, from the sun's rays, from our food, and from other sources. Through gradual purification and regeneration of his emotions and his feelings, control of his fire mist body with its outbursts and excesses, man gradually raises the vibratory rates and unfolds the latent possibilities of the astral body, thus redeeming the animal soul. By his thoughts, ideals, and aspirations, aided by the twin faculties of logic and of reason, man gradually gains control of that seething mental vortex, which will later put him in harmony with the divine mind of the solar God. The occultist is taught that the so-called worlds of nature are the bodies of the solar man, and that each of these bodies corresponds with the lesser vehicles within man himself. Thus, adjustment of his mental body to the mental plane of nature makes him one with the mind of God, and all the other bodies follow the same procedure. Each thought, each emotion, and action accordingly is important, bringing ever closer the day of individual liberation. Any power or quality which paralyzes or even delays this process is detrimental to man, and anyone who consciously seeks to improve himself to the detriment of his brother is unfit to live. Yet such a system forms the keynote of modern ethics. If man would only learn to be honest, realizing that the universe is honest, and that we are rewarded according to our motives as well as our works, then we would rid the world of much that is undesirable. Black magic appeals to the mass mind. It appeals to the principles of our civilization. It offers something for nothing. As long as there is cupidity in the human heart, it will remain as a menace to the honesty and integrity of our race. If occult students will only remember that honesty is the deadly enemy of black magic, and that it holds no chairs for the individual who is true to himself and true to the golden rule, he can protect his own soul and those he loves from its insidious and unnatural influences. End of Magic, a Treatise on Esoteric Ethics by Manly P. Hall. Love yourselves and love each other unconditionally.